our disturbance comes all the way into our body. And then we move more gently, and the birds no longer fear us in our own neighborhood because we see them all the time. We start to recognize them as individuals, and there's threads and there's ropes, you know? And all of a sudden, the birds are telling us things. They're telling us when a person is coming who's really stressed. They're telling us when a hawk is moving because we're not disturbing them. We can learn to sit still and practice with our mindfulness mentors, the birds and the squirrels and the deer, depending on where you live. And they'll come close to you and they'll connect with you and feel comfortable with your presence if you go there every day. It doesn't have to be a bench. It could be a chair. It could be the ground. It could be right outside your door. It could be a step outside your front door. And you'll start to realize that you have neighbors that are always there. And they'll get comfortable with you and they'll start to come near you and feed by you and be comfortable. And you'll start to develop what we call that energy of the sit spot. You'll become a walking piece of nature. That's your nervous system integrating. But if you want to take the integration to another level, you got to think about film. Some of you might remember this stuff. You take a bunch of pictures, you pop that little thing out, and you put it in the drawer, and then a year later you find it, and you're like, oh my God, what's on this thing? And then you have to take it to develop it before you can find out. Then you see that your finger was in front of the lens for every picture. That used to happen. And now, I want you to draw the correlation. If you don't develop the film of your experience, it does not actually integrate. So if you have an experience with a bird that's really cool, and you go to tell it to somebody, it will actually develop it in your nervous system and it will integrate. You know, the more of your senses that you use to tell the story, the more that it stays with you. Okay? So you got to tell your story, but please tell it to someone who actually wants to hear it. One of the big complaints I hear from people is that, I just had this really cool experience and I tried to tell everybody about it, but no one wants to hear my story. I'm like, did it occur to you to ask them? Because sometimes if you ask them, they'll actually say, I can't right now, but I'd love to catch it later, right? But as soon as you get permission to share your story, be prepared that after you tell your story, they're going to want to tell you theirs. Because storytelling is missing in our culture today. Used to be, those Kalahari friends of mine, they tell stories to each other 3 times a day, and they have 25 to 35 people on average that they can talk to that will listen to their story. I think that's the recommended daily allowance for our ancestors, okay? But in modern times, people in our social survey said they don't get to tell their stories at all to anybody, which is really what's missing. So tell your story to people who want to listen. Remember that the nature journey requires the people journey. Those two are a virtuous cycle. And together we can reclaim our stories and build our connections and our ropes. And that's the goal here, to activate that ancient nervous system that we all share with our ancestors, that optimizes us so we can be loving, happy, healthy, vital, creative, and care for each other. And that's how we can connect ourselves to other people and to nature. And that's the secret of becoming supernatural. Thank you.